So on this model Mercedes right here, they came out in 2004 with the engine series M272, which is a V6, and M273, which is a V8. And what we'll show you is the broken intake lever and how you can replace it. So deep down in here, if you look through this bracket and down in the front of the intake manifold, you'll see a tumble lever that is like a butterfly action that activates two rods going into the manifold. And if you look very carefully, you'll see the ball stud on the end of the plastic bracket has broken off. So here we have a manifold out of a car. Now the system is the same whether it's a V6 or a V8. There is an actuator which is controlled by the solenoid right here via vacuum to this butterfly. You can see right here this is no longer connected. So right here is where the failure is. They have a plastic little bracket and there is a ball inside. And let me take that out without breaking anything. And this little ball is broken off right here. When that occurs, this actuator arm is no longer moving the air doors inside the manifold runners. So as you can see right here in the bottom, this actuates these little air doors in the manifold, and the purpose of these is to increase the airspeed over the injector at low RPM, which in turn generates better torque for the motor at low RPM. When this problem occurs, there is a sensor on the back of the manifold which reads whether the flap is open or closed. When this occurs, you get the code 2, or the P code is 2004, and it will say tumble flap stock in activated position. That's the code you're going to get. And the reason we get that code is because this will not see an actuation on and off, the switch on the back of the manifold. The obvious solutions to repair would be to buy this flap lever. However, it's not available from Mercedes-Benz. They only offer this entire manifold right here as one part number, and it's very expensive, driving the repair, including parts and labor, to a very, very expensive repair. The solution is the all-German auto billet aluminum throttle flap. We have made from 6061 aircraft aluminum a billet piece that bolts right in place in the manifold. We've hard anodized it black so it matches a plastic one in color and also adds some wear characteristics and benefits from the hard anodizing. In designing this lever, we've taken a lot of care. With the factory plastic lever and with it going all the way into the return position, you can see that it puts a lot of flex and strain on these plastic levers transitioning through the manifold and down to the reed switch. Now, over time and many thousands of cycles, we've seen some of the manifolds that have broken the levers in this case. Now, to avoid that, when we designed this lever, we have taken 2.5 degrees of the 3 degrees of preload out of the system so it doesn't strain the plastic levers in the manifold anymore. To replace the lever is very easy. Take great care not to break the rods when removing them from the lever right here. You don't want to bend this arm or to break these little arms on the end. Just using a regular panel popper like I'm using right here, super easy. Then remove the lever from the manifold. Sometimes from the factory they use Loctite on this bolt, and it's a little bit harder to get out than this one I'm showing you right now. Simply take this right here, put the bolt back in, and bolt it back on. Now, before installing the lever, hold it in place and make sure that there is no interference between the nut retaining the ball socket and this little pin in the manifold. This is primarily a problem on the V6s, that it gets very close to this nut. So prior to that, just make sure that pin does not interfere. If it does interfere, trim it up a little bit with either a grinder or a pair of dikes, But don't put a lot of load on it like with a screwdriver or anything like that to try to break it off, because the purpose of it being there is to retain this washer that keeps the wiring in place. So to install the lever, simply reverse the procedure, put in the lever in place. You can pop the linkage back into the ball sockets. You don't have to use excessive force. If it doesn't go in, just move it around a little bit. It's the same dimensions of the one you just took off. Snap the lower one into place. Apply a little bit of Loctite to the threads and reinstall the bolt. And then snap the lever onto that. It returns under pressure and it always sits in tension, and the stop here is machined so it stays in line with the micro switches. With this lever installed on the front of the manifold, it keeps the customer from having to buy the entire manifold from Mercedes and saves a lot of money in that respect. It's a more durable part. It's not made out of plastic, so it will definitely not fail again. For removal of the manifold itself, we recommend that you refer to the Mercedes-Benz workshop manual. However, it really consists of removing the wiring harness from the manifold and move it back, disconnecting the fuel lines to the manifold, removing the securing bolts of the manifolds, and then at that point, lifting the manifold out of the vehicle. There is no way to replace the lever with the manifold in car because it's sandwiched tight up against this bracket right here. When going back together, always use new intake manifold gaskets to prevent having any air leaks after repair is done. So once you are complete with the manifold back on the car, you can hook up a vacuum gauge to the actuator, and if you go into activations in the troubleshooting screen right here, the voltage right here on the sensor is 4.95 volt. When I apply vacuum to the actuator, you can see it switch over to 0.13 volt. This verifies that the actuation is taking place and it's getting the read signal from the micro switch on the back of the manifold. After this, all you have to do is reset the check engine light and the car is good to go. This is just another product that Ultra Auto has come up with to save the customers money.